Hi everyone, this is Adam Virgil, and in this video we're going to go over how to create an interactive dashboard using one function in about 5 minutes or so. So this is a really cool video, and that function is going to be the filter function. If you haven't seen my first video on the filter function, I suggest that you look at that first so you understand how it works. And without further ado, let's get this going. Before we do anything, let's take a look at our data set. We have dates in column A, athlete names in column B, their rating of perceived exertion in column C, their rating of muscle soreness in column D, and let's say their player load from a GPS unit in column E. And what we want is we want to see the metrics for one athlete over time, and we want that to be interactive. So how can we do that? Well, we can use the filter function, and we can do it in a lot of different ways. I'm just going to do it in one way. And you'll notice that I have 3 variables up here: name, date, and metric. And I created these drop-down menus ahead of time using data validation. And there are a lot of videos on how to use data validation, and I have one also, and you can figure out how to do that relatively quickly. So to start, we need to figure out what we want our graph to be, or our chart to be. And I'm thinking that at least to start, maybe we have just a list of our athletes for a date that we select and a metric that we select, and that's our first chart. It's like a daily monitoring chart, if you will, for the team as a whole. So we don't have to worry about this name stuff right now. I'm just going to make it white and make the font white so we don't think about it. I'm going to go equals filter, open parenthesis. Now, what do we want? So we want to display a metric over time. And the way that we can do that is in this filter range, we're going to want to know who the athletes are. So maybe we just select everything that we have in our filter range. Comma, now condition 1 is, well, what has to be true? What do we want to show up here? We don't want everything that we selected to show up here. We just want the athletes, or all this information for the date that we select and the metric that we select. So to start that out, let's say that we want just when the date is equal to this date here that we pick, and close the parenthesis and click enter. Nothing shows up for right now, but if we select a date, there's all of our information for that date that we selected. And we have 3 columns there, each with a different metric. And now we're going to get a little bit nuts. All right, so this is going to be intense, but follow me. Follow me here. So to get this to be interactive for the metric that we select, we need to make this 2 columns so that we can pick the metric that we want, and the data in our chart will coincide with that metric. To do that, we need to manipulate this first part of the filter function. Instead of picking an entire range, which is designated by A to E, spanning across multiple columns, is we want just 2 columns. So to start that process, let's put a squiggly bracket right here after the first parenthesis. And what that tells Google Sheets is, all right, you might want a subset of columns that are not directly next to one another. And that's true. That's what we want to display. So our first column, let's say, since it's a daily report where, we'll keep the date there for now because it doesn't really matter that much, but we'll go A1 to A1000, which is us picking the date. That's our first column that we want to come back to us. The second column that we want, we can separate with a comma. And let's say we want B1 to B1000, which are the names. Now the third column, let's just stick with RPE for now, or rating of perceived exertion, which is column C. So we'll do a comma, C1 colon C1000, and close off those square curly brackets and leave everything else the same, except we need to make this also A1 to A1000 because these ranges have to be the same, and we will click enter. And now we have the exact same thing that we had before, but we just have 3 columns. And these 3 columns happen to be next to one another, but if we change this to column D, so D1 to D1000, notice they are all not next to one another, so you couldn't do a range. And if we click enter, now we get the muscle soreness values for the date that we picked, because our filter criteria is the date being equal to the date that we picked. And we can see that with the dates showing up here. It's all for the date that we selected, and if we pick a different date, the numbers will change. Okay, we're almost there, but we're selecting a column manually right now, and we want that to be interactive based on the metric that we pick here. So to do that, we need to use index and match. And I have index and match videos, 3 of them right now, that go over how these functions work together. And I encourage you to watch those if you have trouble following here. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace this last column that we have here with the index match function so that we can match the column to the metric that we pick. We'll type index, open parenthesis. So open up this box. Now our index is going to be A1 colon to E1000. And the reason why it's all these is because we don't know which column we're going to select. So we need to encompass this entire range of data. Comma, the next argument is asking for a row. Which row do we want? Well, this is a list spanning multiple rows, so we don't really care about the row argument right now. And I'll do a comma to bypass it. But we do care about the column, which is the next argument. So instead of typing in a column number, we want to match it to the metric that we pick. So we want to match the column that we select with the header name of the metric that we select. And to do that, we go match, open parenthesis, our search key is the metric, comma, and our range that we're searching within is these column headers here, comma, 0, which just means an exact match. So the column header has to exactly match our metric name. And then we'll close the parenthesis and close the parenthesis and click enter. And now we have an error. The reason why we have an error is because we don't have a metric selected. But let's pick one. So if I pick rating of perceived exertion, now we have the RPE data for the date that we selected for our team. And if I select muscle soreness, we'll see that data change. And if I select player load, we'll see that data change again to reflect the values for our team. Now the last thing that we have to do, this is already interactive in itself, but maybe we want to make it a chart. And to do that, we can just select this, we don't want the date because the date's already showing up here. But if we select our athletes and the metrics and we go to insert, chart, we don't want it to be a line chart. That's a pretty good guess by Google Sheets, but that's not what we want. We probably want this to be some sort of column chart. And what we can quickly do is add some data labels. So I'll go to customize, and my face will be in the way, but we'll go to series and I'll scroll down and add data labels and make it a little bit bigger. Close this box here, and you could deal with the formatting in any way that you want, but let's move this chart away from, I'm moving my face. I don't know if it actually moves on the screen, but I moved it away so that you can see this chart. And now we have an interactive dashboard, if you will, a team daily monitoring report whereby we can select a date and we have our athletes and we can select a metric and see where they're at with any metric that we select. Now, I didn't forget about the athlete names here. So maybe we also want to be, based on this information that we see up here, we might want to select an athlete and see that athlete's metric over time. Because maybe there's cause for concern based on what we're seeing on our team report. So I'm just going to make these black font, and I'm going to move them. First, I'm going to move this chart out of the way, and I'm going to move this name stuff over here, because we'll create a new data set for this, but let's make this yellow so that we know that we're also can select an athlete a little bit later on. And now we just do pretty much the same thing that we just did here, but we do it based on the name that we select and maybe the metric that we select. So let's copy this and let's paste it here, and we have another opportunity to select a metric, or we can just use the same metric as above. So if you wanted to pick a different metric, you would refer to this cell, but we'll keep it the same for now and continue to refer to this one. So I'll remove that column. And now what I'm going to do is, with our formula here, I'm just going to lock everything in by putting $signs around it. So $sign before the A, before the 1, before the A, before the 1000. Same thing with the B's. Pretty much everywhere, before every letter and every number of the cells that I'm referring to, I'm going to put $signs around. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that when I copy and paste this formula, none of my references will move around and I won't get confused. If you don't do this, then it'll get very confusing very quickly. Now I'll just click enter again, and notice nothing has changed. But if I copy this formula and I paste it right here, we have the exact same formula that we had before. And now, because we already did so much legwork for this first component, we can make a couple of quick switches and get this to be an athlete's data over time. In our filter function, we say that we just want the data when the date column, which is column A over here, is equal to the date that's in this cell. But we don't want that anymore. We want when the athlete name column is equal to the athlete name that we select. So to do that, we change column A to column B, so we'll go B1 to B1000 in our data set, which is the athlete name column. And instead of referring to this cell that it has to be equal to, we want it to be equal to this K cell. So instead of H, we'll replace H with K and click enter. And nothing shows up, but that's okay, because we don't have an athlete selected just yet. And when we do, there's the athlete's data over time for the metric that was selected here. And we can just do the same thing that we did before. However, what we might want to do here is not even show the athlete name, so that when we select our data, the athlete name doesn't show up, although you can manipulate that in the chart settings. Let's also, in our filter function, we say we want this column, which is the date, this column, which is the athlete, and then we want to match this column to the metric that we select. But let's just remove the athlete column from this list and click enter. And now we just have dates and the metrics for the athlete that we select. And now if we select this data, and I'm going to select more in case we add more dates, and we go to insert, and I'm going to move my face again. We go to insert, chart. Now we have a line chart for that athlete over time. And I'm not going to do any fancy manipulation on this chart right now, so it's not going to look that great. But now, what we have is, normally, this is important to note, normally I would collect the data in one sheet, and I would create this visualization in another sheet, so that, just so things are separated, and I'd even store this data in another sheet also that isn't part of the visualization. So in the end, you would just have some selectors, you might have this daily team report, and then you might have this athlete report, let's just say underneath it for now. And I wonder if I could zoom out here, and this isn't going to look very great, but hopefully you can see that now, we can change the date for our team report and change the metric, and that'll change the metric in the team report and the athlete report. And if we choose a different athlete to look at, that'll change the athlete's data over time. Okay, so I quickly changed locations because the internet went out where I was at, so I'm going to finish this video, this video here, and the last kind of part of this is to make this thing look pretty. And the way that we can start doing that, if you're interested, and you don't have to do this, you can do whatever you'd like or organize it any way that you'd like, is the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the names of these metrics. Change RPE and soreness and player load just to make them shorter, and everything will still work. Although it shows no data here, all our drop-down lists change, and when we select the right metric now, everything will still work. Now I'm just going to go through a little bit of reorganization. And like I said, normally I would collect this data somewhere else that is not where the visualization is. So I'm going to pretend like this data set is not here and it's somewhere else and hide these columns. And pretend like this is just a full blown out dashboard page. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make all this data white. But like I said before, again, I would also organize this data on a separate sheet as well. So really this page would just be a dashboard page where you see the charts and the selectors, and that's it. And all this stuff is operating somewhere else. That's really important to understand. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to make all this stuff white, all this data white, and we'll just start organizing things and making it look nice. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this header row size, I don't know, let's say 35, and I'm going to merge all these cells together and call this, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it team monitoring dashboard because I don't know what else to call it. And I'll make it bold, and here we can align it in the center and vertically in the center as well. And maybe I'll make the font a little bit bigger, let's say size 20. And now we need to decide what theme we want to go with or what our colors are. And I happen to choose the Seattle Kraken hockey team colors just kind of randomly, and because I like the color blue. So I have the colors here, and the way that you can get colors or custom colors is if you know the color codes, you can click on this plus button, type in the color code here, and you'll have that color, or you can drag it around and pick a custom color that is not provided in this color palette here. So here are the two colors that I'm going to use, and I'll make this background that color, the dark blue, and I'll make the header white. And now we can organize this a little bit. So I'm going to put this team monitoring area over here, and I'm going to align. Eventually my face will get in the way of all this stuff, but you'll see what's going on. And I'll align this with that chart. And I'll drag these charts, make them a little bit bigger by dragging on the bottoms of them. And let's start with the charts and how they look. So I'm just going to use these colors to make the charts look the way that I want. And using these theme colors, I'm going to click on these three dots here, edit chart, and this is where all the chart settings come up. And I'm going to move my face, and I hope it moves for you too, so that you can see what I'm doing when I edit the chart details. The first thing, let's say that we do want this to be a column chart, that's fine. We can go to Customize, Chart Style, and choose whether we want the chart to have a border. I'm going to say no border. We can also choose the background color. And the background color for this chart, I'm going to make the light blue color. And we can also make it maximized, which makes it really big. I don't want that. We can also make it 3D, which, fine, maybe we'll do that to add some flair to it. You can also add chart and axis titles. I'm not going to add any of those, especially not axis titles since our axis is dynamic. Because if we change the metric to something else, the title should change, and currently Google Sheets does not support that. So if I go back to Customize and our series, I'm going to change the color of our series to be that other color that we have selected here. And I'm going to keep the data labels on here. And I'm not going to really deal with any of these other settings, but I will adjust the horizontal axis and the vertical axis colors. So I'm going to go to the horizontal axis here and go to text color. And right now I can't get to my custom colors. I'm not really sure why, but I'm going to show you how to get the colors that I got, or how to get the color codes that you need. So what I might type in here is Seattle Kraken color codes, and I'm going to look up the team color codes here because I can't reach my custom colors. This is the blue, the dark blue that I got, and that's the color that I want my labels to be in that chart. So I copied that hex color code, and I'm going to go to back to here and go to text color, click on custom, and paste the code in here, and there we go. I'll click OK. Now the font changed on the bottom there, and I'm going to do the same thing on the vertical axis. I'll go to the vertical axis and pick the text color. Now the colors are showing up again for whatever reason, and I'll select the same color. And that's all I'm going to do for this chart. For the next chart, we just do the same type of deal. So we'll click on the three buttons on the top right corner, click Edit Chart, and Customize. And then this time, when I go to the chart style, I'm going to again remove the chart border, and I'll make the background color this time that dark blue maybe, just to make it different. And again, I'm not going to add any chart axes or titles, but when I go to my series and formatting that, I'll make the color of this series that light blue, the other Seattle Kraken color, and make the line thickness maybe a little bit bigger. We could add data labels if we wanted. I'll add a trend line just because. And you can choose what type of trend line you want if you do decide to add one. Right now it's linear. You could have it be a moving average or a bunch of other things. I'm just going to keep it linear because I'm not really focused on the details here. I just wanted to show you how to make things a little bit prettier. And when we go to the horizontal axis, I'm skipping over the legend, but you could add a legend if you wanted one. I'm going to change the colors of the horizontal axis to, and I'm going to go back into the Seattle Kraken colors and copy the hex code for the light blue one, because again I couldn't really reach the color that I wanted. I'll copy that and go back and paste it here and click OK. And now my labels on the bottom are that same light blue color. And I'll go to the vertical axis and do the same thing here. Wow, and this time I really can't see the text color. So I'm going to go out of the editor and go back in and see if that'll do anything, or that'll help. The vertical axis. Oh, and here we go, it's back. So Google Sheets is a little bit finicky with the chart sometimes, but now I can see the colors, and I'll select the light blue color for that axis. And now for grid lines and ticks, I don't want major grid lines on the vertical axis, and I don't want them on the horizontal axis either. I just want it to be a line chart like that. And to me, that's fine. And now the last few steps here is we're going to make these selectors look nice. So I'm going to drag this name over here. I'm going to select these two cells and merge and center the name so it covers two cells. I guess it didn't center it, but it merged it. And then I'll move this name field over here, and I'll select these and merge them, and maybe I'll call this select athlete, and we can move this in line with that, and I'll make this column a size, let's say 10, just to add a little bit of space in between the charts. And then I'll move this chart over a little, bit. And we'll do the same thing that we did here where let's merge these. And let's move this down, and let's move the date. I'm just clicking, when I see the hand, I'm clicking and dragging it to where I want it to go. Then I'll move the date over here, and then I'll merge it. It's important to always merge from left to right, or else your functionality will be lost. So I'm doing this in a very specific way, where I drag something and then I select the left cell first and then the right one and then I merge. If you don't do it that way, then you'll find that things will break. And maybe I'll make this the row height 10 just to have a little bit of space there. I'll drag these charts down a little bit more. And this takes some playing around with to make it fill your computer or whatever the screen size is that you have and you want it to fill. And I'll say select date here, and I'll say select metric here. And maybe I'll make this column a little bit bigger, let's say 120 or so. And maybe I'll do this, I'll keep that the same. And this over. And now the last part of this is I'm just going to color code these things the same way that I did here. So maybe I'll hold down the control key on a PC here, select this and select this, and I will color the background, let's just say this light blue. And then for the things that we select, I'll select one cell, hold down the control key and select another, and keep holding down that control key and select another. But you could do each of these independently if you'd like. And I'll make the background color that dark blue and the text color, just say white. And maybe we make it bold, and maybe we highlight all this stuff and we center align it, and we make it vertically aligned horizontally. And I'm going to move my face kind of back over, and that's it. So now we have a kind of nice looking dashboard that we can use, and it should be fully functional, whereby we select a date here and a metric, and we can see how our athletes compare to one another over here, and we can see for the metric that we select here how this athlete is doing over time, and we can easily select a different athlete and see how they're trending over time as well with this metric that we select here. So I hope that this video was helpful. If you enjoyed it and you found it beneficial, please give it a like and subscribe so that YouTube knows that it helps at least someone out there. And thank you for watching and for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.